Row Motorsports has officially unveiled their 2024 NASCAR Cup Series driver lineup. Gisbergen is close to signing a deal with Trackhouse Racing and drive for them in 2024, and no Gragson has been released from Legacy Motor Club. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports story discusser today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. Row has been starting to talk about live pit stops. As reported by Bob Pockers yesterday, that there are live pit stops for tonight's Truck Series race at Indianapolis Raceway Park and a Milwaukee Mile in a couple weeks, unless it rains out the Cup Series race Saturday night at Daytona. Now, if it does rain out Saturday night for the Cup race at Daytona, that means that the Truck Series race at Milwaukee Mile is not going to have live pit stops, and there'll be modified pit stops. Of course, all the Cup Series pit crew teams are going to be in Daytona on that Sunday. It's something to keep an eye on. I think it's very interesting. It's good to see that the Truck Series race tonight will have live pit stops. The reason they do is because they're basically in the same area. I think Lucas Oil Raceway is like 10 miles or just a few miles away from Indianapolis Motor Speedway. So nonetheless, it's really cool to see that there are going to be live pit stops. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Indy Road Course and IRP purse money. As every time we have a NASCAR Cup, Xfinity Series, or Truck Series race, Bob Pockers puts out the purse money. And according to him, for the Cup race, it's $9,158,803. For the Xfinity Series race at the Indy Road Course, it's $1,619,312. And for the Truck race tonight at IRP, it's $699,222. That's a pretty good purse money for this weekend. Obviously, for the Cup Series, it is, I think, really almost highest purse we've had almost all year, but granted, there are a lot of uncharted teams that are going to be running this weekend as well, being paid, but also, of course, the charter money comes into play as well. But I think that is some pretty solid and some pretty good purse money for this weekend. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Indy Restart Zone. As it was reported by Bob Pockers, multiple other reporters, including Taylor Kitchen, that the Indy Restart Zone is going to be located between turns 13 and 14. The reason they're restarting there is to try to get everybody a little bit more spread out. Now, NASCAR, I said it, Ellis Sawyer went on Sirius and NASCAR Radio a couple nights ago. He said that they could potentially have single file restarts if it gets a little more chaotic and crazy, so everything can get even more spread out. I really do hope they do go to single file restarts immediately, because they do that. I think it is going to be better for the sport in general. I think the racing will be better, especially on the restarts, and you won't have the chaos in turn number one, which is one of the reasons why they moved the restart zone farther back, so everyone could get a little more spread out. But hopefully they do go ahead and add single file restarts for this event. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Brad Perez. As it was announced earlier in the week that Brad Perez will drive the 53 for Emerald Gase Motorsports this weekend at the Indianapolis Road Course. Brad Perez, really good driver on road courses, has some pretty solid runs on the road course as well. Has had, I think, a couple top 20s in the Xfinity Series, and has been pretty decent in the Truck Series as well. While I don't think Brad Perez is going to set the world on fire because of the equipment he's in, I certainly think if we see a lot of attrition, I think he could survive and maybe, just maybe, get another top 20. This is a really awesome and great opportunity, and looking forward to see him have a chance to run with Emerald Gase Motorsports. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Jake Drew. As it was announced, I believe, yesterday or Wednesday, that Jake Drew will drive the 61 for Tory Racing tonight at Indianapolis Raceway Park. Jake Drew, very underrated driver. I think he won the ARCA West Championship in 2021 or 2022. And he's made a couple truck starts, I think, in the Truck Series as well, or made one start, and I think that was in Nashville. And honestly, was really impressive. I think that was with Thor Sport Racing. I wish he was in a 6.6 truck this weekend. Of course, Connor Jones is driving that truck. But I do believe Jake Drew is an underdog to maybe win this race. Notoria, while they haven't had the race-winning pace, I think Jake Drew can get the best out of the equipment. And nonetheless, I think it's a really awesome and great opportunity, and looking forward to see if he'll be driving for Tory Racing at IRP. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Greg Van Alst. Now, I've already talked about that Greg Van Alst is going to be running for Young's Motorsports at IRP, but it's confirmed from multiple other reporters as well on Wednesday that Greg Van Alst is going to be driving for Young's Motorsports for the rest of the 2023 season. This is a really awesome opportunity for Greg Van Alst. Obviously, Greg Van Alst was supposed to run the full ARCA season in 2023, but due to sponsorship funding, he cannot run the rest of the year. So I'm really happy to see that Young's Motorsports is not only helping out with the sponsorship side of things, because I think they're going to, CE Fabricating is going to sponsor Greg for 5 of those 7 races. And I think it's great to get some experience in the Truck Series as well. It's made a couple Xfinity Series starts, but those did not go very well. But again, Alpha Prime Racing has struggled. Nonetheless, great opportunity for Gray Van Alst. I'm looking forward to see him out on the racetrack and happy that he'll be running with Young's Motorsports. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tony Breidinger. Now, it was reported by Adam Stern, I believe on Wednesday late evening, that Tony Breidinger is already catching attention from Cup Series sponsors and becoming a social media powerhouse despite not running full-time in NASCAR yet. According to Zoof, she's the #1 on social media when it comes to being the fastest in growth. Obviously, Tony Breidinger knows how to use social media and does a really good job on this. And this is no disrespect Tony Breidinger. I think she has done a pretty decent job as a NASCAR driver, really a race car driver, I should say. And I think her craft has improved this year in 2023. But there's no disrespect to her. She shouldn't be the #1 person because I think all these Cup Series drivers that are the guys like Bubba Wallace and Chase Elliott and even Kyle Busch and Kyle Larson all should be doing a better job on social media when it comes to promotion and growth. To me, it's good to see that she is attract sponsors. Raising Cane is actually going to sponsor a thing tonight in the ARCA race in Indianapolis Raceway Park. But still, I think it is really disappointing to hear that you're not having more Cup Series drivers really working on their social media game. And if the sport is going to grow long term, social media is going to be that way to go. So hopefully they can find a way to work on that. Basically get more sponsorship for these Cup Series drivers. Hopefully they can find a way to work toward that. Maybe Busch coming in, they can work with Ross Chastain a little more, but social media is the way to go. Streaming is a huge way I think things are going to be changing, and nonetheless, I do believe that there needs to be some big changes. But it's cool to see she's #1, but hopefully maybe just maybe in the future, some other drivers in other series can do a better job promoting the sport in the future. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cole Custer. Now, Cole Custer, it was announced, I think, on Wednesday that Cole Custer has received an L1 penalty for splitter modification. It's a $25,000 fine for the crew chief, Jonathan Toney. But here's the big thing. They get a loss of 20 driver points and owner's points, and they lose 5 playoff points. Obviously, in NASCAR Xfinity Series and Truck Series don't have the same rules as the Cup Series. With the next-gen car, the Cup Series basically has a really, really crazy rules, so drivers don't mess with the car. The Xfinity Series doesn't have these rules, but this car was sent back to the R&D Center. Actually, the part was confiscated on Friday during tech, so it was speculated there might have been a penalty coming the way. Honestly, this is not the worst penalty I have seen in the world. At least he still is in the playoffs right now. But man, that could be really, really crucial for Cole Custer fans if he's going to have a chance to win this championship. Because I think Cole Custer does have a chance to win the championship. And there's some good tracks coming up. But that loss of 5 playoff points is absolutely crucial and absolutely huge for him to make. Especially when it comes to the seeding. He's going to probably be a little bit lower on the seeding. Granted, he's still in the top 5 or top 10 in the points. So he can definitely get a lot of those points back with wherever he finishes in the regular season. But still, it is really disappointing here that Cole Custer did receive a penalty for this, but it's not surprising and shocking because you're not supposed to touch these cars and mess with these cars. But hey, at least it's not the NASCAR and Cup Series where if you touch them, you're going to get a massive, massive penalty. So interesting penalty coming in, and Cole Custer has received an L1 penalty for modifications to the car. And now we're going to hedge on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Jordan Anderson. Now, it was announced on the during SiriusXM NASCAR that Jordan Anderson was on that Jordan Anderson is going to field a third car at Daytona in a couple weeks. Jordan is going to drive his third car. Number was not announced and sponsor was not announced, so I would imagine the Bommarito will likely be the sponsor, considering Bommarito has had a really good relationship with Jordan Anderson for a very, very long time. And what's really cool about this and why this is awesome is Larry McReynolds is going to be the crew chief. Now, why is Larry McReynolds crew chief for Jordan Anderson? Well, Larry McReynolds is the father-in-law to Jordan Anderson. So that's one of the big reasons why he's going to be working with them. But I am so stoked and excited to see Larry McReynolds coming back to work as a crew chief. Larry actually did crew chief last year in 2022 for Jeffrey Earnhardt in the 3-team for RCR. And we saw Larry McReynolds almost get him a victory. And I think while Jordan Anderson may not immediately win the race, I think you have to put him as an underdog because of Larry McReynolds being the crew chief, being one of the greatest crew chiefs in NASCAR history. But also, Jordan Anderson's been really good, at least in the Truck Series here. So I think that Jordan Anderson could have a very, very solid and a very, very good run. I'm looking forward to see him. Of course, he does have to qualify in because it doesn't have any owner's points. And I would imagine there's going to be a lot of competition trying to qualify in this Xfinity Series race at Daytona in 2 weeks from now. Really excited about this, really pumped about this, and very happy and glad to see that Jordan Anderson is going to be fielding this and he'll be racing at Daytona. Really looking forward to it. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about motorsports games. Now, over the last couple of days, there's been a lot of rumors and rumors about motorsports games. We've had basically in the last month, we kind of talked about this in July, that there apparently is some huge substantial NASCAR announcement that is coming in the coming months. Then we got a tweet from Mike Straw, and he said that there could be some massive changes coming to motorsports games. Now, one thing you know when it comes to motorsports games, there was supposed to be an earnings call, I believe, on Tuesday, and that call got canceled. Now, I believe there's an earnings call that's scheduled for August 30th, but I believe it's required on the stock markets. I believe on the stock market, you do have to have those earning calls to tell your investors how things are going. And the fact they're canceling earning calls is not a really, really good sign. There's obviously been a lot of rumors that they could be getting bought up by a different company, like maybe iRacing perhaps, or basically maybe like EA coming into play. Maybe there's also the fact that iRacing might be taking over the rights of NASCAR's license, and it sounds to me like with other reports and like Alan Bailey that September 30th could be the end of the license for NASCAR motorsports games. Remember, they signed this contract, I think, through 2030, so the fact of getting out of the contract early, I think one of the reasons is because NASCAR has the game, obviously, we all know motorsports games is not a very, very good company. NASCAR 21 Ignition, absolutely disaster of a game. NASCAR 5, not a very good game right now. It was decent before they updated it, and then they completely screwed it up. NASCAR Rivals, crashing buggy. Trust me, though, I've never played a game, but this is for what I heard. I do think that MSG is one of the worst gaming companies I have ever seen, and I really hope they do crash and burn, and that this is the end of the company. Because in my personal opinion, this company sucks. They're terrible. They're garbage, and they do not deserve your money. I hope no one buys any games from them anymore and supports this company long term. But I think there's a good chance that there's going to be some huge changes coming. We're going to be waiting until September 30th. Sounds like that's going to be the day that this could be the end of the contract and things could be changing for the better. So hopefully things can change with the company going forward in the foreseeable future. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse Racing. Now, we're going to talk about Trackhouse Racing and Shane Van Gisbergen here at the end of this episode, but Justin Marks on Sirius and NASCAR Radio early in the week. And it was reported by them, I believe, yesterday that Trackhouse Racing is not planning to field an Xfinity or Truck Series team anytime soon. A lot of people thought maybe they would field one next year because of Shane Van Gisbergen. Trust me, we'll be talking about Shane Van Gisbergen here in a little bit. But Trackhouse Racing is right now committed to just running full-time in the NASCAR Cup Series and working with that. And honestly, I can't blame them for just focusing on the Cup Series because it would have been a lot more money and a lot less investment. Look at Car Racing, for example. They've put so much focus on their Cup Series program. I think that their Xfinity Series program in general has kind of suffered because before they went to Cup, they were a championship contending team with all three of their drivers. Now, in 2023, while yes, they've had good runs with Chandler Smith, they're not the same team they were 2 years ago, and I think a lot of that focus is to the Cup Series right now. So I think that's why they're struggling. But they have been working with drivers to run them in NASCAR Xfinity Series and Truck Series races. You've obviously got Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be making his Truck Series debut later this evening at Indianapolis Raceway Park. You've also had Ross Chastain drive for Nice Motorsports while and win some races for Nice Motorsports in the 41 team. And you've also had Dino Suarez, who was in there as well. And then you've also had Carson Osbar with the Worldwide Express sponsorship work with them as well, which a lot of people believe that Carson Osbar long-term could go to Trackhouse in the coming down road in the long-term future. But I think Trackhouse just focusing on the Cup Series does make a lot of sense financially, and I think it makes a lot of sense that they are going to do that. Now, will they long-term do it in the next few years? That is a huge possibility. I could see happening like 2026 or 2027, but I think at least for the next 2 years, 2024 and 2025, I think that they're just going to focus on running the Cup Series right now. But I think long-term, if things continue to get better for Trackhouse, I think that eventually they will focus on having an Xfinity and Truck Series team. I think by the end of the decade, I think it is going to happen. But I think short-term right now at this current moment, I do not think that it is going to happen. But things could change. Things can change very, very quickly, and maybe, and just maybe, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different, and maybe long-term Trackhouse does decide to run an Xfinity Series team. But right now, in my opinion, I do not believe they're going to see Trackhouse expand outside of the Cup Series, and he did confirm that they're not going to do that right now, but I think long-term, they're going to field maybe an Xfinity Series or Truck Series team in the next couple of years. But right now, in 2023 and going into 2024, they will not field a Truck or Xfinity Series team. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Carson Hocevar. Now, earlier in the week, there was media days for the Truck Series Plus, as tonight the Truck Series Plus kick off at Indianapolis Raceway Park. And Bob Pocker asked a question about Carson Hocevar and the potential of him going cup racing. Because according to Bob Pocker's report, he says that Carson Hocevar is really the top candidate for the 77 for Spire Motorsports in 2024. Obviously, Spire Motorsports is making some really, really big changes going into 2024. Corey Joy has signed a multi-year contract extension with Spire Motorsports starting in 2024, probably through 2025 and 2026 as well. And they've already had huge upgrades for the team as Gamebridge, which is, of course, the big partner with Andretti Autosport, of course, the owner of that company for Gamebridge, is also co-owner of Andretti Autosport currently at the moment. But Carson Hocevar hasn't been as the lead candidate for the 77 car because Carson Hocevar has been extremely talented. And it sounds like there's a really good chance that possibly he's going to be taking that ride. Now, why would he be taking that ride next year? Well, it sounds like Ty Dillon, there's a very good chance for him that he is going to be leaving the team at the end of this season because Ty Dillon, let's be honest, why do you think Ty Dillon has a little bit of talent? Ty Dillon has not been very good in the Cup Series. And even in the Xfinity Series, he really has struggled this year in the 3 car. He ran that car a few races and honestly struggled. At Pocono, he was getting outrun by guys who he should not be getting outrun by. Guys like Parker Kligerman. And even guys ahead of him he should not be getting outrun by. And both his teammates, Sheldon Creed and Austin Hill, were up front throughout the race, and Austin even won the race. So if I'm looking at Ty Dillon, I think that Spire Motorsports smart, they would let Ty Dillon go. They've already had a crew chief change. They brought Kevin Boney in the crew chief. It's easier to change your crew chief up than the driver up. But I think at the end of the year, from indications, there's a really good chance that Carson Hocevar is probably going to take over the 77 car. Now, if my personal opinion, I would love to see Carson Hocevar go to the Xfinity Series more than going to the Cup Series because I think Carson Hocevar would do way better in Xfinity than he'd do in Cup. But I don't think Carson Hocevar would be worse than Ty Dillon. I certainly think he'd do a much better job. He did, to be fair, in his first start before he had a brake rotor failure. He drove that 7 car up the 16th position, which is absolutely impressive and absolutely incredible. So I think Carson Hocevar running in Cup wouldn't be the worst decision in the world, but for me, I would love to see him run in the Xfinity Series next year and get some more experience there as well. But if he does go Cup racing, if I'm Spire, I'm running the Xfinity Series program and giving him more Xfinity Series experience, even though the Xfinity car is much different than the Cups are. And it seems like, for what a lot of people said, that the Cup car and trucks are very, very similar when it comes to the driving style. It's very interesting to look at. Nonetheless, Carson Hocevar remains top candidate, and hopefully he'll get the opportunity and shot to run full-time in Cup next year. I'd love to see him make some Xfinity Series starts, though, but it sounds to me like he will be the top candidate for the 77 car in the Cup Series. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Hailie Deegan. Now, Hailie Deegan last night was very, very impressive in the SRX race, and we've seen this the last couple weeks for Hailie Deegan. Last week at, I think it was Berlin, she ran top 5 and ended up finishing in the top 5 there. And then last night, she had her best run probably in her SRX career up to this point. She almost had a shot to beat Tony Stewart, ended up winning the race, and she ended up finishing second. And she was interviewed by Matt Weaver after the race and also interviewed, I think it was by Nicole Briscoe, after the race concluded. And she says that that really good race in the SRX is giving her confidence back. And I hope that this can translate to the Truck Series. And it seemed like it did a little bit, at least at Richmond, where she had the fastest truck at points in that race at Richmond. And yes, she did have a little controversy with Dean Thompson and, of course, Ryan Vargas as well. But she ran a very, very solid. She's been running better recently, I feel like, and her performance has been improving in the Truck Series. But I think she's had 2 straight top 20 finishes, and I think those runs in the SRX are really helping. And this is a big question about Hailie Deegan's future. There's been a lot of talk that she could move up to the Xfinity Series headed into the 2024 season. Now, if you want my personal opinion, I think after last night, I want to see her run Xfinity in 2024. People, she's got talent. I know she's struggling in the Truck Series, but she has talent. And some drivers do better in other series than others. Yes, like I said, she has not had a good year in the Truck Series. There's no question about that. But some drivers, like I said, do run better in other series than others. Look at Harrison Burton, for example. Harrison Burton was not good in the Truck Series. He wasn't terrible, but he was not good. And he drove for Kyle Busch Motorsports and missed the playoffs the year he did in 2019. Then he goes to Xfinity Series with JGR in 2020 and goes on to win 4 races. He doesn't make it past, I think, the round of 12, but still, he made the playoffs that year and got 4 wins and was an outside championship threat at least early in the season. You look at Jimmy Johnson. Jimmy Johnson wasn't the greatest in Xfinity, goes to Cup and wins 7 championships. Not the greatest comparison in the world, but you get my point. Some drivers do better in other series than others. You're not going to always have drivers like Zane Smith and Carson Osbar who are good regardless of what series they run in. Some drivers do better in other series than others. And she's still developing. Granted, I know she's a little older now. She's 22 years old, but still, she is still developing. But I do, like I said, hope this can give her some confidence. Now, my big question going next year, what teams could she drive for? Obviously, yes, people want her to go to the 98 car for SHR. I know they would be cool to see her drive for SHR next year in Xfinity, but right now, my personal opinion, Hailie Deegan is probably not going there because Riley Herbst is driving that car and he brings sponsorship and funding. And Cole Custer is the son of Joe Custer. And while people think he'd go back to Cup right now, I don't think Cole Custer is going back and taking that 10 car. So we'll talk about who I think will be going to 10 car here in just a little bit. Nonetheless, when it comes to Hailie Deegan, I really hope she gets the opportunity and chance to run the Xfinity Series in 2024 on a full-time basis because she deserves a chance, a shot, and an opportunity, and we'll see what happens when it comes to Hailie Deegan's future. We've already talked about it a couple times, but I hope she gets an opportunity, chance to run in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2024 on a full-time basis, but she also needs sponsorship funding. Maybe Honey Buns could come in and sponsor her. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 3 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Noah Gragson. Now, we talked about Noah Gragson yesterday on the channel, but reason we talked about Noah Gragson, a breaking news report on this, is because Noah Gragson has requested to be released from Legacy Motor Club, and it's been reported that they officially have parted ways. Noah Gragson says that he basically wants to respect his family and wants to get respect back from the competitors and the fans as well. Cal Wells says that he respects Noah Gragson, knows that Noah has talent, and that he deserves a second chance. Obviously, the reason Noah Gragson has requested to be released from Legacy Motor Club has been rumors that this was likely going to happen at the interview regardless. But Noah Gragson liked a post on Twitter. I think it was either on Instagram or Twitter, and because it was a very, very offensive meme that it was basically circulated on social media. Now, I've already said that Noah Gragson absolutely deserves a second chance. However, Noah Gragson definitely made a mistake by liking that post, because if you like that post, you're likely going to get in trouble. And wouldn't surprise or shock me that if all these teams did have social media clauses where you have to be very careful what you like on social media. Maybe get a burner account if you want to like that stuff, or maybe don't like that at all. But here's what I will say. Noah Gragson absolutely deserves a second chance. Noah Gragson has a lot of talent. He's a very good race car driver. I mean, the guy won 8 races last year in the Xfinity Series. You don't win 8 races in the Xfinity Series with Junior Motorsports if you're not good. He beat some really good competition in 2022 as well. But it's going to be tougher for Noah Gragson, I think, to come back. Obviously, he'll go through the Road to Recovery program. Did I think he deserved the indefinite suspension from NASCAR? That might be a little bit of a harsh penalty, but he'll probably go through the Road to Recovery program. Now, I don't think he's going to be in the Cup Series next year, if we're going to be honest, because sponsorship money is going to come into play, and Noah Gragson doesn't have as much sponsorship as he used to have. People mentioned a 31 for Cog Racing, but I think that they're going to be going for more of a funded driver, and I think Austin Hill is going to get that 31 car. Will he go back to Xfinity Series? I think there's a good chance maybe he goes back to Junior Motorsports, but are probably going to looking for sponsorship funding. And would Dale Jr. take a chance on him? Maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. There's also other teams that could give him a chance. Cog Racing Xfinity program could be a potential possibility, but they might be looking for sponsorship as well. Maybe Lift Filter, though, could work with Noah Gragson in that sense as well. But now the big question is, who gets to drive that car going forward? Well, obviously, we know Mike Rockefeller is going to be driving at least the next 2 weeks. This weekend at the Indy Road Course and then next week at Watkins Glen. But also now, who gets to drive? Imagine maybe Josh Perry will get a few more starts. Maybe they get an opportunity, Matt DiBenedetto, where he can make some select Cup Series starts with Legacy as well. Maybe they give him a chance and an opportunity as well. Nonetheless, when it does come to Noah Gragson, I want to see him get a chance and an opportunity, but hopefully maybe some other guys get a chance as well. And I think this pretty much gives a possibility now that John Hunter is likely going to be in that 42 car next year. Obviously, with Mark Truex Jr. coming back to the team in 2024 with Joe Gibbs Racing, I think at this point, we know who's going to end up basically being in that number 42 car next year. I know people say he should sit for a year, but I think Legacy is going to be better in 2023 they were in 2023, because it's no secret that Legacy Motor Club has been terrible and they have struggled this year. So we'll see what happens when it comes to Noah Gragson, the future of Noah's career. But I think at this point they will be better. I think John Hunter is going to take the 42 car next season. I think he deserves a chance to be in that 42 car next year. So I think he's done really good in Xfinity. He deserves to be in Cup. I'm glad to see he's getting another opportunity to be in Cup once again. When it comes into Gragson, I really hope he gets a second chance and opportunity to run in the Cup Series in the future, but I don't think it's going to happen in 2024. Maybe in 2025 it does happen, but 2024, I don't think it's going to be a possibility with all this controversy. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the first of two major stories of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. Now, there's been a lot of talk questions around Shane Van Gisbergen over this week because Shane Van Gisbergen early in the week has spoken to the media and he had not had a deal signed. That is until last night. It was reported by Adam Stern that Shane Van Gisbergen is finalizing a deal to compete for Trackhouse next year in a wide-range development deal, per source familiar, fulfilling one of the team's goals to bring an international star to NASCAR racing full-time. This has been expected as Shane Van Gisbergen was going to be driving NASCAR full-time, more than likely in 2024. But the question was he going to be driving full-time in the Cup Series or doing like multiple different series, but running the full season? So it looks to me like what maybe the plans are is one, maybe getting him a ton of Cup starts with Trackhouse Racing. Now, the big question is what number will he drive for the team? Could he drive the number 91 or 97? I think there's a good chance the 91 car for the Project 91 car might go away at the end of the year, and that may be put as Shane Van Gisbergen's ride. But again, I think it all comes down to charters. Where could they get a charter from him to go full-time? Well, maybe they get a charter from Rick or Racing. That could be a possibility as well. But I also think this includes him running some Xfinity Series races and Truck Series races as well. Now, what teams could he drive for that Trackhouse does have a connection with? Obviously, Kaulig Racing, they have a little bit of connection. I would imagine that Kaulig would love to have Shane Van Gisbergen drive his stuff on the road courses and ovals to get experience as well. And I also imagine that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to get that opportunity to drive some other truck races as well. Obviously, he's making his Truck Series debut later this evening at Indianapolis Raceway Park in the number 41 track for Row Motorsports. And if he runs like top 15 or even top 10 tonight, that is going to open eyes of a lot of people in a very, very positive way. But I want to say this. I am so stoked and so excited to see that Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be in NASCAR next year in 2024. One of the reasons why he's going to be in NASCAR next year, though, is because of the fact that basically SVG has been kind of frustrated with what's going on with supercars. He's not a big fan of the new car. They do have it in supercars. He wished it was basically the old car at this point. And obviously, I think he wanted a fresh breath of fresh air. And obviously, he won his debut at Chicago Street Course, and I think he's got a really good chance to win the Cup Series race at the Indy Road Course this week, and he's going to be with Trackhouse. I think they're going to have some really good pace and really, really good speed as well. And Shane Van Gisbergen, I think, is one of the most talented drivers in the world, and he's going to have a little learning curve to do at least on the ovals, but the fact that they're going to be doing a development deal to work with him going into 2024, I think is really, really cool. Now, will he be full-time exclusively in Cup? I don't think so. I think it's going to be, like I said, I think it's going to be multiple different series where he's going to end up driving, whether that's driving full-time, maybe make it so like 12 or 13 starts in Cup, 12 or 13 starts in Xfinity, or 12 or 13 starts in Truck Series. That's something I think is going to be potentially really, really possible. But I am excited for the future of Shane. I love he's coming to NASCAR full-time. I've been wanting him to do it this year. And I can't wait for him to be in NASCAR 2024. People have been really discrediting the guy, saying he's going to be the next. I saw someone say he's the next Danica Patrick, and I think that's completely and incredibly disrespectful because he's much better than Danica Patrick. I think comparing to Marcus Ambrose wouldn't be a bad comparison, but you also do have to remember that Marcus Ambrose never really had top-tier equipment. I think Trackhouse Racing will have taken a step back this year in 2023. They're certainly still a very, very good team. They've already won multiple races this year. Well, they had 2 races this year with Ross Chastain at National, and then, of course, they did one with Shane Van Gisbergen at the Indy Road Course. I think next to the road courses, Shane Van Gisbergen is absolutely going to be the favorite of anybody in the field, but I think Shane Van Gisbergen is going to be someone that's going to be really fun to have in the series in 2024. I'm looking forward to seeing it. I cannot wait to see SVG come the NASCAR in 2024 with the Trackhouse Racing group. The goal for them to bring an international driver and has been extreme success. Shane loves it over here. He's enjoyed being over here. He's raced over here in the past, of course, with IMSA, but I am so stoked to see that he's going to be coming to NASCAR. And I think this weekend, I think the deal is going to get officially finalized. They're probably going to talk about it. Justin did say that he's going to be over here this weekend and that they're going to talk about it. But I'm so stoked. I'm so excited. I'm so pumped up. And I'm very looking forward to see Shane Van Gisbergen in NASCAR basically on a full-time basis in 2024. My expectations for next year is just do good in the lower series, do a really good job there, get that experience there, maybe win a couple races this next year in 2024. And I think he will win some cup races next year. I think it's maybe 1 or 2 next year going to 2024 with Trackhouse. I'm looking forward to this. I'm excited about it. And again, I think it's just so awesome to see that we are going to see Shane Van Gisbergen in NASCAR next year, because I think he's going to do a really awesome and good job in NASCAR in the 2024 season. We'll wait for the deal to be officially finalized, because it sounds like it's not too far down the road from being finalized. Looks like SVG will be joining NASCAR in 2024. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Front Row Motorsports. Now, there's been a lot of questions about Front Row Motorsports lineup for 2024, as usually Front Row Motorsports waits until October or November to announce their driver lineup. Well, Front Row has made their decision already for 2024, and their lineup is a little bit shocking. So it was announced that they're basically keeping the same lineup for 2024. Michael McDowell is going to continue driving the 34 car for Front Row in 2024, and Todd Gillen is going to drive the 38 car once again in 2024. Now, interesting thing to note, they tried to get a third car so that Zane Smith could drive full-time for them in 2024, meaning they were probably trying to get a charter for the team for 2024, and they were trying to get Zane Smith an opportunity to run full-time and cut for them, but unfortunately, they're letting Zane Smith basically walk away and letting him go. Now, they are basically going to continue their truck program going into next year, and Zane Smith could end up driving for them once again in 2024 in the truck series, but we know that Zane Smith does want to run full-time cup racing in 2024. Now, I want to talk about this move. Front Row really had a difficult decision to make, because they had 3 really good drivers for 2 spots. Obviously, Michael McDowell is having a fantastic year in the NASCAR Cup Series with Front Row Motorsports, where while he hasn't won, he's only like 3 points below the cutoff line currently at the moment, and has been in the playoffs many races this year as well on points alone. And Front Row Motorsports has shown some really big signs of improvement. And then you look at Todd Gillen. Todd Gillen's done a really good job. He's been with multiple different teams, and because he got kicked out because of sponsorship and stuff that Zane Smith basically had. And Todd Gillen has really taken that, not as a depromotion, but a way to really prove himself. And he's proven himself this year. I think he's in the top 25 in points right now on speed alone, despite running in multiple different cars. So both drivers have done a really, really good job. But here's something I do want to say. I really wish that Front Row would have kept Zane Smith around. If I really had to choose when it came to Front Row what their lineup be next year, I would have kept Zane in the 34 car and kept Todd Gillen in the 38 car, and had moved Michael McDowell over to 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing, because obviously there's a lot of talk that that Eric Almirola is going to retire at the end of the 2023 season. So that ride was going to be open, and I think SHR should have gone with more of a veteran driver. But I understand what Front Row is doing. They wanted to keep both their drivers around, but I would have been looking toward the future and not looking toward the present, because let's be honest, Michael McDowell is not getting any younger. He's 39 years old. He'll be 40, I think, at the start of next year in 2024. So Michael McDowell is going to be much older, and he's not going to be around for much longer. And I don't think he's going to continue to keep this up for a very, very long term. Todd Gillen, I think, has a really, really great future. But if I was Front Row, I would have kept Zane Smith, because now they've lost their future crew chief, being Blake Harris, who went over to work at Alex Bowman and Hendrick Motorsports. And then, obviously, you have basically now Zane Smith, who's likely walking away, which is really disappointing. Now, my big question now is what happens with Zane Smith. My guess is Zane Smith is now likely going to end up driving a 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. I've already mentioned this, but it's very likely that Eric Almirola is going to retire from the NASCAR Cup Series at the end of the 2023 season. Yes, Eric was supposed to retire at the end of 2022, but he made the decision to come back for 2023. And Eric Almirola last year, though, performed a little bit better. This year, Eric Almirola has struggled in the Cup Series, though I will say the SHR has shown very small signs of improvement. In 2023, they still struggled as a team. And Eric Almirola has not made a decision yet for 2024, but many in the industry do believe that Eric Almirola is going to retire at the end of 2023. So I guess at this point, that is where Zane Smith is likely going to end up. Now, like I said, he could still remain with their Truck Series program in 2024. But if you want my opinion, Zane Smith, I think, is now going to end up in that 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing. I think Zane right now may be the number one prospect that is not in the Cup Series on a full-time basis currently at the moment. And he's made a couple select NASCAR Cup Series starts for Row Motorsports, and I think he has done a very good job with Row Motorsports in those select starts this year. So like I said, I am disappointed to see that Zane Smith is not going to be a firmer next year in 2024. So I think Michael McDowell deserves another better opportunity. I think that SHR, while they've struggled, I think the 10 car that we would have seen Michael McDowell do a little bit of a better job. But I guess Michael McDowell loves being in front row. And like I said, they have been showing signs of improvement. But I would have been looking toward the future if I'm front row. But again, it was a very difficult decision because Michael McDowell's been doing a really, really good job. And obviously, we've seen a really good job from Todd Gillen this year. And it's also surprising, too, because Zane Smith had a contract with From Row through 2026, but it sounds like maybe it's only a contract of 4 right now through 2026, which means, like I said, I know people mentioned a 21 car for the Wood brothers, but I don't think that Zane's going to go to the 21 car. Harrison Burns got sponsorship with Dex Imaging, and I think if they're going to keep around in 2024. A few months ago, there have been rumors that that might end up happening. They may go to the 10 car, but I think those rumors have died down, and it's very likely at this point that you're going to end up seeing Harrison Burns stay in the number 21 car in 2024. Nonetheless, when it does come to Zane Smith, I think it sucks he's not going to be a front row next year, but I think he'll get another opportunity. He's way too good. I think he'll be in the Cup Series full-time in 2024, and I do believe that he'll be in the number 10 car for this team going into a 2024 season. But it's good to see Ferrari announce our lineup already. At least it takes another team off the bucket list. Now we talk about the rest of the silly season, what remains. You do have the 21 car. It's not set at this point, but I think that's going to go to Harrison Burton. The 10 car for Stewart-Haas Racing now I think goes to Zane Smith. Kaulig hasn't announced their lineup yet for 2024. Rumors are Austin Hill's going to take 31 car, and I think Allmendinger might return to the 16 next year. You do have Rick where they could sell one of their charters, but also I think it's still going to be a 2-car team next year. And then you also have SVG who's likely going to be going to Trackhouse next year. So silly season's really starting to come down and wind down just a little bit, and there's not a lot of rights left available in silly season currently at the moment. So anyways, that is going to be today's NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please like, subscribe to the channel, notifications on so you know if I win a video does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support my Patreon as well. Links go below that. Comment below your thoughts below on today's episode. What thoughts about Row Motorsports 2024 lineup? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And what thoughts about Shane Van Gisbergen joining Trackhouse Racing in 2024? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Later tonight on the channel, the NASCAR Truck Series race review from IRP. Then tomorrow on the channel, the NASCAR Xfinity Series race review from the Indy Road Course. And then on Sunday, of course, the NASCAR Cup Series race review from the Indy Road Course. And then next week, we'll be getting preview for Watkins Glen. And we also have some special content dropping later next week as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.